We have in the studio Samie Ihejirika, Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, SEMA. He will be talking to us about new conflict resolution mechanisms in Nigeria. Now, some will say Nigeria is on the precipice. Some will say Nigeria is on the edge or verge of collapse because of the recent rhetorics about national unity and cohesion. We have agitations in different parts of the country. We have national conversations that seem to have some tone of ethnic, division and all of that. How is Nigeria to respond to all of these things to remain united, stronger and together? And that's what we'll be talking about on the show this morning. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
And thank you for having me.
Now, as an expert of conflict resolution, every day we see these stories on our newspapers, in our televisions, in our radio. We hear about the rhetorics and how, politicians sometimes make certain remarks and all of that. How are we handling agitations and conflict situations in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to recognize that everybody has some need, and that behind every conflict there are unsatisfied needs. But most of the time here, we wait until things go so bad, before we begin to, engage in that kind of fire brigade approach in solving the problems. But peace building or conflict resolution is a deliberate thing. It's a proactive exercise. You don't just have to wait until things get so bad before you begin to address them. There are what we call early warning signs. We see this in the family, we see it in our relationships, that things are not exactly how they should be, So it's at that point in time that we need to begin to address the issues, But for us here, we leave things to go so bad. People begin to hate each other, people begin to kill each other. Then before we know it, it's serious. And then before we begin to think of how to intervene, by then things have gone so bad. So we need to be very deliberate about this. We need to be very deliberate about it. We have to be proactive and begin to deal with issues as soon as we see the early warning signs. First and foremost, communication is very important. If there's a breakdown in communication, and you begin to see signs of a breakdown in communication, I think that's a point at which you will intervene and make sure you restore communication. Because without communication, you cannot build relationships. So relationships are about communication. Yeah. So we see a situation where Nigerians wait until what we call ambush management. We do ambush management. You wait and see, they ambush, and see who will go wrong, and then you do something. But that shouldn't be the case. Everybody has some pressing need, which we must all address. Because if you satisfy your need and mine is not satisfied, I'm going to be restless. And if I'm restless, you are not going to be comfortable. So I think we need to change our psyche, our mindset in terms of how we approach problems.
How did we get here, in your opinion? How did Nigeria get to this point? Some said we've never seen it this bad.
Yes.
In our history, in our national journey, or yes. I would say our national unity and all of that. How did we get here?
Well, I think it's all a question of greed, that some people want to have everything to themselves, because there's that opportunity to do that. And more especially to the law, that is the judiciary, those who enforce the law. People don't obey laws in Nigeria. Nobody. Beginning from the top to the bottom. And these things are, what do I call it? They are infectious. Once a leader is not respecting the law, the tendency that those following will not respect the law. So when we don't respect the law, and the judiciary itself is not helping matters and standing firm, we hear about corruption in the judiciary and all that, except we can enforce the law and make sure that whoever goes wrong, whether it's your brother, your mother, or whoever, that he faces the wrath of the law.
Right.
So, but they were so, dancing around it because of wealth, because of money. So I think we need a kind of orientation. The political arena, the political space is, fraught with all kinds of, quest for money. Everybody's struggling to be in charge because you need to control the money, which is not the real thing, because common good is something everybody should be working for. We should all work for common good. But since the advent of politics in Nigeria, that is this nascent political drama, what they call it, democracy, things have gone so bad. One, the business looks so lucrative, very lucrative. It's a lucrative business. If you can get your way into the place, you are made. So everybody's fighting like hell, to get in there. So we need to, really do some kind of reorientation.
Okay.
For everybody, leaders, followers, because if we don't do that, the mindset we have now is a very dangerous mindset.
Right.
That winner takes all, yeah.
Okay. Now, we all know that the government is supposed to look out for its people.
Yes.
But many would say it shouldn't be their responsibility alone.
Yes.
Are there other who is responsible, to ensure that peace, is created, that arena of peace and harmony is created? Everybody
has a responsibility to look after each other, right from the home, First and foremost, I must talk about the family. I don't think parents are doing very well. The families are not doing well because if you see a miscreant in the street or a greedy politician, it must have come from a home. So I think that first and foremost, our democracy should begin at home. If we learn to keep peace at home, if we like to be democratic at home, if we learn to be, cooperating at home, if there is love at home, then we can take it out to the bigger society. So I think that's where we need to, begin to look at first of all. Then we go into the main arena. Many people are not educated. Our educational system is very poor. Let's face it, not much is going on there. If we have to compete in peacemaking, or want to compete in economy, or whatever it is, or want to be in the 21st or 22nd century, education is the foundation. So peacemaking is not just an all-commerce thing, it's a skill. And that skill can be acquired over time by emulation. We see those who are capable of doing it and we emulate them, or we teach it. But there has to be some level of orientation. And moreover, we don't put in money into peacemaking, into resolving issues. We don't put in money there. Government doesn't put in money.
Right.
The civil society groups who are working find their own money. They go to the international donors, and ask for money. And at some point, there will be fatigue. Those who are giving you money will be tired of giving you money, particularly when they don't see any good result coming out of the investment, So we need to change all that narrative and see how we can have local resources where those who are willing, to work for peace can buy into that system and be able to, get something done.
Okay. Now, some will say, well, an angry man, a hungry man is an angry man.
Yes.
And if you look at the level of poverty in the country, some data, have shown how that Nigeria is poverty capital of the world and all of that, those kind of data. We've seen them. How would you reconcile these two? How is it possible for Nigeria to achieve peace, in this atmosphere of, high rate of unemployment, high rate of poverty in the land, high rate of, out of school children, people who are largely illiterate and all of that? How is it possible to achieve peace in looking at these social problems?
First and foremost, I think that education is very important. I said that earlier on, because you must get people prepared, to engage in profitable ventures, have the idea, have the knowledge, have the skill on how to do it and get things done. So if you don't have lots of people who are educated and who are capable of, reflective thinking, they can take care of their situation. They can, easily make adjustments in their life and know how to adapt and get things done. That is one. Then secondly, there's a correlation between economy and violence. When people are poor, the tendency that they resort to self-help, do all kinds of things to, make ends meet. So I see the government here running some programs, which I call all kinds of little programs, which I call palliative programs, dashing people money, which is not sustainable. And then hiring young people for jobs, for 3 months, 1 month, sometimes, and they don't get paid. It doesn't work that way. Those little things they don't create wealth. Wealth creation has to be a very deliberate economic plan. For example, we have lots of moribund industries around the country, textile industries, all kinds of industries that are all shut down. None is functioning. But I tell you, for example, if you resuscitate the textile companies in Kaduna, you can imagine the number of people who will be employed in that arena. And when you employ people, there's a multiplier effect. When you earn salary, there are people who are dependent on you, there are people who make supplies to that industry, and so on and so forth. So it's not a question of dashing people money and you think you can leave them out of poverty. You cannot. So you must have to create an economic base, an industrial base, because that is how you can build a nation.
Well, economic experts are suggesting that we could sell these moribunds you just mentioned instead of the borrowings we see Nigeria doing. Are you of that opinion as well?
Yeah, but if you sell them, what next you do? It's like man's looking trying to borrow money, If you sell them, are you going to reinvest the money? Those things are there. They could be easily resuscitated. They could be reactivated.
Could they be? Because it looks like some of these industries have gone so bad that it's almost like you cannot even redeem it.
Yeah, but
maybe because of sometimes the international politics and forces.
Let's not assume that. Let's do an assessment and see what is redeemable in these organizations. The infrastructure is there. You don't have to start building a new infrastructure. But I think it would be cheaper, if you really resuscitate these industries and get them running, even if it's on a skeletal level, and then you will, scale up as time goes on. But industrial base is very important. Are you going to build new industries? For example, there's some other concept, that could be very helpful to us. Instead of looking at very huge projects, we want to build Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which we are building for the past how many years? Almost 20 years. We are building the second Niger. Those things are consuming lots of money, and it's not helping. They're not helping matters.
And they part of the infrastructural, issues that need to be fixed to attract investment and all of that?
We have borrowed so much money that we don't even see the result in terms of the infrastructure. Look at the roads. The tanker drivers wanted to go on strike because of bad roads. They can't deliver. It's subject to attack, on the highway because some of the bad roads have become dense for criminals. So we just got to invest in industry, in production. We can't be a consumer nation and hope that things will be fine. We must produce and produce qualitative, products that we can export and make an income in foreign exchange. So unless we're capable of doing that, whether we want to look at the refinery, for example. How much have we spent, trying to fix the refineries? The corruption. Because when the money is voted, people just share the money. We have seen that in so many aspects of our lives. So I think the citizens need to really wake up and pay attention to how we, recruit our leaders, because it's very important, very, very important.
Okay, now, what is the role of collaboration in peace building? Because, for instance, in Jos, where I have a relative in Jos, it's a Hausa community.
Yes.
And when you want to visit certain places, they tell you, no, you can't go there because they're all Christians here or they're Biroms here.
Yeah.
And it's same for the other tribe as well. What is the role of collaboration, in ending such, scenarios?
Incidentally, I did a lot of work in Plateau State, working on the Plateau, conflict on the Plateau. Mm-hmm. We did a whole lot of work there, just like in Kaduna. We started working in Kaduna with the Zango cut-off crisis in 1994, 93, about. And ever since then, we did a whole lot of work. But you see, the problem we had were these politicians, that with all the wonderful things we have done in terms of building, bringing people together, reconciling them, getting people to forgive one another and all that stuff. A politician who has some ambition comes in, and his ambition overrides, common good. And he makes policies and makes statements that will set the whole place on fire because he wants to garner support for his ambition. So most of the times, the politicians are to be blamed for what's going on right now. It didn't used to be so. The ordinary Nigerians want to live together. I've been in Kaduna for several years. I witnessed a whole lot of protests and killings and what do you call them in Kaduna, crisis in Kaduna. But you find out that soon after the whole thing is over, people quickly come together and keep on working together as if nothing happened, which means that the ordinary person has nothing against each other. But the incitement by the politician, by the political class, for domination, for being in control, kind of makes these things so difficult to really deal with. So I think that, again, the process of recruitment of leaders, I think is very important. Because the way it is going right now, look at what's happening about the congresses. We were talking about internal democracy. And of course, ask some of these political parties, what is your vision for Nigeria? What do you want to see? What Nigeria do you want to see? No, they don't have ideas. Have you ever seen any one of them talking about tomorrow? What could happen about the educational system, about the health issues? No, all they're talking about is planning on how to rig elections. I don't know whether they discuss any other thing in the political meetings other than how to rig elections, how to be on top. Nothing. So it's really a shame, that we were enjoying a huge atmosphere of peace before all this thing came in. I remember Kaduna pretty well, that people were living together until this whole thing started and Kaduna became separated. And it has become so difficult to bridge that gap, to get the Christians and Muslims living together. But why can't they live together? They can't live together. Now you're talking about collaboration. You don't build collaboration without empathy. There must be good communication. We must empathize. We must put ourselves in each other's shoes to feel the pain I'm feeling, to see the need I have. And I can tell you that most of the times we talk about bringing people together, we don't talk about their fears. What are your fears beyond your needs? What fears you have? People have a lot of fears.
Now, there's also...
We must address these fears as well.
Yes.
The needs you have, yes.
Now, there's also another issue that has been on the front burner of recent. We have a large number of people, in thousands, who were, before belonging to the Boko Haram, coming out to say, okay, we are surrendering our arms, we are now, repented, we are not going back to that, fighting insurgency and all of that. And the government say, well, we are having an open window for those who are willing to give up their arms and, come out of this. And then on the other hand, you are having victims also who have been displaced, who feel aggrieved, by these same people. Yes. We are now having a situation where it's almost like bringing together these same people, integrating them back together, into the same communities and all of that. Some Nigerians have expressed different views, as far as that is concerned. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think it's wrong, to just give a blanket amnesty to criminals, to those who have destroyed and maimed and killed. It's wrong. Elsewhere in the world, if you do the crime, you do the time. If you commit a crime, you got to be, you got to follow the law. You punish them for what they have done. And if you want them to come back, be reintegrated into society, that's what they call victim-offender mediation, where you bring the offender to meet the victim, those who he has subjected to pain and suffering. Face them and tell them you are sorry, or apologize for what you have done, and let them reconcile. It's not the government reconciling on behalf of those who have been wounded. It's not done anywhere. And besides, Boko Haram is an ideology, and the ideologies don't die so quickly. We have seen people who have been involved in those kind of extremist activities, and they say, let's reintegrate them, and eventually they go back to what they know. Look at Afghanistan. And there's several other examples, So we cannot assume that the process we are following now to reintegrate criminals back into the society is worthwhile. It's not. I think that they should go to jail. They should be jailed, and from jail you bring them out to face those that they've hurt. Because those guys in the what they call them in the rehabilitation centers, refugee camps, they're human beings. They've been subjected to all kinds of hurt and pain, and you can't just wish it away. So if you join this kind of thing and you did something, come and see the people you hurt. Face them, look at them in the eyes and tell them why you did it and why you shouldn't be punished. And if you have anything to say, to beg for forgiveness, because there are people who will forgive you, then you beg them for forgiveness. And if they say, okay, it's fine by us, that's fine. But the government shouldn't just do it as the right, because I'm government, then I have to just...
But is that even possible in this case that we are looking at? Some of these, former, I would say, ex-Boko Haram fighters,
Yeah.
They don't even know the number of people that they've killed.
It doesn't matter.
So they don't even know the people that they've
matter.
killed.
We know but you know the community where you've been killing the people. You know where you went to kill the people. You may not know who you killed and the number you killed, but you know with the community. Go and face them. That's how to build peace. That's how to build peace. Otherwise, these guys are going to be hurting for revenge, for retaliation. And if they see any slight opportunity, they can even take it out on other people. Like the guy who says his mother was kidnapped, and the sister were kidnapped. And because of that, he has joined the criminals to go and find the mother and the sister, wherever they are. And that he's even thinking of kidnapping other people so that they can see what he's going through. So, these things are very, very tricky. I can tell you something. Unless we have a deliberate policy, a deliberate plan, a proactive plan to build peace. What is peace building? Creating those conditions that are necessary for peace. Who will make it happen? All of us, the family, everybody. But most importantly, those who make the laws. Look at the utterances of the people in the National Assembly. It doesn't help matters. People come in there. Look at how much we talked about electronic voting, electronic transfer of votes. Look at the amount of energy and time we wasted talking about this, which should be a given, that we want to improve our electoral system and make it better, make it more transparent. Right. And people are really against it. We're arguing like hell because they want to preserve their positions, and stay in the Senate. It doesn't work.
Okay.
Now, in your experience as a peace builder and a conflict resolution expert, what's the most common denominator that you have seen, that usually is the reason that sparks, these conflict situations in different parts of the country?
Well, I think most times, things border more on resources. But I think we should control the amount of, the kind of information that people receive, I think it's important. Without battling with the social media.
Right.
It's okay, but social media is very important as well. But you can have ways of minimizing the negative aspects of social media, So I think the kind of information that people have out there is very, very, very important. Because many people now have a perception that anybody who is not on my side, who is not like me, is an enemy. So at the slightest provocation, you take it out and you deal with the person like an enemy. Because we say the way you see the world is the way you respond to it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we have created these enemy images. The perceptions are so bad. People have wrong attitudes and behaviors towards each other. So all those things need to change.
Okay. Now, talking about social media content, we get to see quite a lot of content that sometimes spike, and show that some of these violent moves are taking place because of the content we see on social media.
Yes.
Are you for the federal government's move to regulate social media?
Well, I think that requires a lot of collaboration with the service providers, those who control the social media. Because look at the pros and cons. A lot of people, their livelihoods depend on the social media. And on the other side, then you have this kind of negative impact you're talking about. So if there are issues that would raise hell, bring down hell, I think several countries have ways of dealing directly with the owners of these social media, platforms, and discuss with them on how to regulate the kind of things that come to your country or whatever, But you cannot stop people from you can't stop the freedom of information and the freedom of knowledge and people looking for, communication and all that. You can't gag people. But we must find a way to tweak what kind of information that are received and so on and so forth. Even people who make televisions and provide all that, they make provisions for making it possible for young people to watch certain programs on TV. You don't have to begin to tell the child, don't watch this, but they make it that you can't go there, you know. So some of those kind of preemptive actions, you know, need to be done so that people don't have access to certain areas of information that could be hurting. But that doesn't mean you should clamp down like they clamp down on Twitter, and so on and so forth, and everybody is at a loss on why that should happen, you know. There should be some other ways of doing that regulation, so we don't shut out people's means of livelihood completely.
Okay. Now, while we talk about building peace and, you know, conflict resolution, another thing of concern is the proliferation of firearms. You have a large number of people in possession of firearms, unauthorized people, people who have no business carrying arms, you know, having these arms in Nigeria. How do we build peace in such a scenario? Is it possible to mop up these arms and, you know, with the level at which we are, you know, right now?
Well, first of all, let us ask ourselves, why are people looking for arms? And how do they get these arms? How do the arms come in the first place? We saw at the beginning, when was that, in 2015 or 2014, how lots of ammunition, uniforms were being passed through the border, custom border. They come in, you know, in large numbers. Apparently people were scared or better prepared that maybe the elections will end up in a fight. So there are reasons why people look for arms. One, to protect themselves, and the other to find what to eat, and so on and so forth. But the point is, you know, if you make it difficult, if you make it that carrying arms is not necessary, then nobody will carry arms. People carry arms because it is necessary to carry arms.
Is it necessary?
Well, yeah, because if you have to protect yourself, you've got to look for arms. You've got to look for the gun.
Doesn't this signal that people have lost confidence, you know, in the government protecting them?
Well, the government is not protecting anybody anymore because you know that the primary objective of the government is to protect, for protection and welfare of citizens. And when that is lost, people resort to self-help. Nobody wants to sit down in his home and then just get killed, you know, by any road gun-trotting guy, you know. So people try to get arms. And again, if the economy is good, people are employed, people are, you know, engaged, gainfully engaged. You don't have time for all this kind of stuff. So it signifies a total breakdown in the system. So how do you mop up the arms? Create jobs. Do the right thing. And people will forget about their guns and look for better things to do.
Okay.
Improve education. Make it exciting. Change the style of education, because the way it is now, you know, it's not useful. You know, people forge papers, forge exams and pass, and they don't know what it's all about and all that. Change all that. And it can be done, you know, if you have the right opportunity to do it. Yeah.
Now, you earlier mentioned that the family is an important agent, you know, to peace building.
Yes.
Do you think Nigerian parents, you know, have the right tools to actually teach their children what peace building
Yes,
means?
they may not have the right tools, but they can acquire the tools. They can acquire the tools. As a matter of fact, you know, this family is the first society for the child. So it's what the child learns in the family that it takes out to the community and then to the larger society. So if you see bad leaders, they're made at home. So we've done a lot of research on this. You know, that's what they call the evil tree, or the conflict tree. You know, where you see a normal tree growing, and then you see the stem, you see the branches, and then you see the roots way into the ground. So most of the time, we brew, what happens is mixed up in the nutrients that the tree gets from the soil. And it's that those nutrients that go up and maybe get properly better refined in the stem and then taken to the leaves, you know, for the leaves to blossom and so on and so forth. So this represents also the way the life is, the way our system is organized. You know.
But don't other agents, you know, of socialization contribute to this?
No, they do, but the first place is a home. Okay. The first place is a home. Because at that point, you know, kids are very photographic. Their memories of photographic. You might think they're not following what's going on, but they're following. I remember a kid, you know, who had a lot of knives, you know, in the house. And then people asked him why he has lots of knives. He said he saw his father and mother throw knives at each other.
Terrible.
And at some point that he was even killed because they missed him while they were throwing the knives. So for him, he feels that the way of life is to have knives and throw knives. So he's used to throwing knives, you know. So if you grow up in a home where there's no love, where there's no democracy, where the children are not heard or listened to, you know, it's a problem for the larger society. If you have a family where parents are never there, everybody's waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and storming out and coming back at 10 at night, no time for the kids, and in between, the kids do whatever thing they like. And most times we've hired nannies who do all kinds of things with the children, you know, and it's not helping the society. Elsewhere around the world, people pay so much attention to family and early childhood education, which you're talking about. You know, in the kindergarten schools, those who teach in the kindergarten schools are PhD holders. You must be well qualified to have access to those children at that level, not just anybody. So there are deliberate efforts. Look around the world. Which are the happiest societies in the world? Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway. What did they do? They have very good policies on family. They have friendly.
How important is culture in this conversation? Because one thing that influences people's behavior, of course, is culture.
Yes.
And this culture also determines how families are run.
Yes.
You know, particularly in this African setting.
Yes.
You know, that we are in.
But every culture has some element of value.
Yes. So
cultural values.
what do we need to do? What are the things that we are to look out for? You know, in these cultures that, you know, either helps in building, you know, responsible children and vice versa.
Yeah, we need to go back and look at those things that made the family cohesive and good in those days, you know. Some of them may have been outdated by now because of, you know, developments in technology and all that, but we're always adapting. If you watch what is going on around the world, you know, the education of children has gone so, you know, technical. It has gone so, what do you call it?
Digital.
Digital, yes. Digital. School, house. It's gone so digital. So you must find a way to engage children in a very productive and helpful manner. You must find a way to do it. We had good family values in those days, where it's not just the parent alone who takes care of the child, but the entire community takes care of the child. You know, somebody can discipline your child for you and so on. But all that has changed.
You don't have that now anymore.
You can't do that now. But how do we overcome those kind of problems? These are conversations we should be having. It's not one man's idea. I have lots of ideas, but I think we need to exchange these ideas with a whole lot of other people so that we can come to some agreement. Even though here in Nigeria we find it difficult to have a common agreement on what is true and what is not true, you know. So, but how we can come out, even if there are some cultural deviations, you know, cultural variations. Yeah, each culture can look at their best practices, you know, what really had worked for us. How can we modify this, or, you know, in the light of current developments in the world, you know. So it has to be a very deliberate. Yes. I keep on mentioning deliberate effort. If you don't pay attention to it,
you know, for the most part, what you are saying applies to maybe an ideal family where you have, like, okay, yes, it's ideal. You have the father, you have the mother, and all of that. We have a lot of broken families.
Of course. Why are the families? Why are the families broken?
And mostly, maybe as a result of poverty, you find that children grow up in a family where they don't even listen to their parents. Children grow up in a position where they have to fend for themselves, you know, and all of that.
See,
how is it possible to do this?
This is a cycle. Bad parents bring up bad children, and those bad children become parents, and they bring up, and it goes on. So you have to break the cycle somewhere. And I think this is a point at which you can break that cycle, that we don't have to let it replicate itself over time and become a norm. You were talking about culture. Don't forget that you can build a new culture. We have a culture of corruption in Nigeria right now. We have the culture of impunity. They didn't used to exist. So every day we create new cultures. We have the culture of affluence now, that you measure how successful you are by the kind of car or whatever you show, no matter how you get it. You know, all these are cultures. We create new cultures every day. So cultures change, you know, they vary. But if you talk about tradition, yes, but then something that I did, something is a tradition doesn't mean it's correct. Time changes everything. So we need to begin to look at some of those. If you talk about size of family, things that happen in the family, people need to think again. Do you really need to marry 4 wives? Do you need to have 37 children that you can't look after? Do you need to send your child to a place that you cannot look after that child? Do you have to have children you cannot look after? Do you care about your kids going to school? Look at what's happening with the majority system. We have leaders who have so much money, affluence, and all that, sending their children to schools abroad and are building big homes. And they have children who line up in front of their homes with plates waiting for just pittance. And they don't show any empathy about that. They just look at them and go, what kind of people are these? And what kind of society are you trying to build? You got to be human, for Christ's sake. You got to be human. Our problems begin in the family. They begin in the family. We must pay attention to homes and how parenting is done. The skills may not be right now, but we can improve on the skills. We can work on it. It can be done. It's not something you postpone for tomorrow, because if you postpone it, it's just like kicking the empty can down the road. You see, the problem is still waiting for you down there. Right. So it's better you start now. Now, what you do, apart from having parents to look after their children, you also need to work on the parents. Because most of the parents themselves are maladjusted. And they came from maladjusted homes. Talking about divorce and broken homes. What is the problem? Economy, deceit, bad information. People don't come out to know exactly who they are, getting involved with until maybe they will knee deep into it and then they begin to regret. There are all kinds of social services that can be provided to support the family and to support those who want to engage. But our attention and priorities are so different right now. I work as an NGO. Here you find that most NGOs are like leaves on the tree, where the wind blows, and there's money out there. Everybody gets in there, so that we leave so many things undone, unfinished. So I think that first of all there has to be that will, that will to do it. There has to be the passion.
Is there any project that, for instance, your NGO is working on, that has to do with this, family and all of that?
Yes. I used to live in Kaduna. I relocated to Abuja late 2019, and then COVID came 2020 last year, and then 2021. We are trying to do more of what we call the strategic interventions. For example, the family issue. We are working with the Women Affairs, Ministry of Women Affairs, to see how we can use that platform, to move this issue, move this forward. Again, you find out that most times, the government people don't have money. They tell you, oh, we don't have money to do it. But it's important to do it. So how can we? We must find money to do it. I think everybody is affected one way or the other by bad parenting, by the aftermath of bad.
But what's the plan of the project, and what's the goal of the project that you're proposing?
The goal is to reform the country from the family
level. From the family level. Yes,
from the family, transforming Nigeria from the family.
Okay, now you earlier mentioned the culture of corruption.
Yeah.
Does corruption have a role to play, in pulling down the fight, the peace-building agenda?
Of course it does. Of course it does. What is corruption after all? There's different levels of corruption, different types of corruption. Influence peddling is corruption. Nepotism is corruption, and so on and so forth. It's not only when you receive money. There are other elements of corruption that you bring to bear in the work we do. There are silent discriminations that go on in every business, particularly here that I told you, the perception is so bad, that people have enemy images. Once they see your name, they immediately have a mindset on how to engage you and so on and so forth. We shouldn't be, we should be looking out for talent. We should be looking out for ability, competence, if we are going to turn things around. Everybody in this country has something that you can offer the country. Right. We all don't have to go to university or be graduates or whatever, everybody, that you have to lower standards lower, everybody can, it can't work, it cannot work. People are talented, people have work. So how do you help people to realize their potentials, their talents, if you don't create that enabling environment, that atmosphere that can empower everybody, to be who you want to be. So we have all kinds of people in this country, and that is a blessing. Somebody was, trying to debunk some of the ideas we have about Nigeria, that Nigeria one out of every 5 Africans is a Nigerian. Of what benefit is that to us? Has it brought any benefit to Nigeria? That Nigeria is the largest economy. What benefit has it brought to us? Nothing. So some of these notions we have, bloated notions about ourselves, should be removed. Let us be humble and live within what we have and how we can manage what we have and produce. And that even takes us to the issue of borrowing. It's not healthy for now and the future, particularly when we know we don't have the resources. You can't generate enough resources to back up that borrowing.
Exactly one of the issues that I wanted to raise earlier on. But, we talk about the need to revitalize some of the industries that are moribund in Nigeria. That way we'll create employment and all of that. But how can government do that when it lacks revenue, it lacks money to do so? And so it says, well, the best thing to do is to borrow and, invest in these things.
If you borrow and invest in things that would be profitable, that is fine. For example, let me give you an example of the way I look at development. Our development ideas have been top-bottom approach to development. So can we reverse it and begin to think of bottom-top approach? Let us go to the rural areas, build all the rural areas, pay for all the rural roads, put electricity in the rural areas, put light water in the rural areas. Look, development follows roads. The moment you build the rural areas, which can be done, it can be done. There are strategies for doing it.
Without borrowing?
If you borrow, you put it into such things because the dividend will come very quickly. But even at the amount of money you have now that are stolen, which if you plug up the gaps, you can recoup those monies. Every local government can be empowered to build rural roads. If you have good rural roads, people don't need to live in the city to go to work. If your home is close to the city, you go to work from your home. And that brings development. Cars will be on the road. Mechanic will follow. Food sellers will follow. Petrol sellers will follow. Transporters will follow. All kinds of things will happen. Crime in the cities will go down. Rural-urban migration will go down. You could decongest the cities. Things will work a lot better. So if you're in your home now, you can live in your home and deal with anybody around the world. You don't need to be in the city. Movement is now going from city centers to the rural areas, elsewhere. So we need to pay attention to some of these little details, that we can go back and see how we can build our communities. Because the communities can produce. They can farm. They can do. If every local government has one cottage industry or 2 cottage industries in Nigeria, 2, based on the natural resources you have there, tell me what will be the multiplier effect on employment and development around the country? Huge. The amount of money we spent on the Ibadan Expressway would have done this for so many local governments. I'm not saying that those shouldn't be built, but there's a lot of corruption going on out there as well. The thing can't be finished. Even in 2 years, it cannot be finished. So if we pay attention to changing the narrative of now building from the bottom up, where you look at the communities, how do we strengthen the communities? How do we make the cities safer? How do we prevent rural-urban migration? So you said people will build schools. People who live in the cities are now living in their homes. They will think of how to educate their children. They will build schools. Health centers will come. You can set up any kind of business, because you have internet access, you have all kinds of stuff. So,
do you also subscribe to the idea that government is spending too much on running governance?
Of course, yes. There's no question about that.
And all of that.
That's why they're killing themselves.
How do we bring it down?
That's why they're killing. And in fact, you don't expect these guys where they are now to change that law. They will do everything to make sure that this amount of money they're receiving and what they're getting is okay. Now, government can cut down. We can cut down the cost of governance. First of all, let us even plug the loopholes for money being stolen. The amount of money being stolen, but in fact, the ministries are even the worst. Nobody's talking about them. We are talking about the big guys who carry billions of naira. Go to the ministries. Look at the budget they have every year. Go through the budget lines and you see corruption. So you can plug up that. And then we must change our political system. That is, in terms of people who want to lead. Leadership is all about service. It's not about being served. It's about service. So we need to find people who are willing to serve. We don't need to pay house allowance, buy house for.
With the kind of political structure that we have, how do you even identify the people who are willing to serve? Because it seems like everything is monetized right now.
Yeah.
And so if you do not have money, it's like just when you have the money, you have your way.
Yeah.
You know, so, and it's like if you don't have the money, you are nobody, no matter what ideas you have, no matter how credible you are.
But you see, that is the point, that at some point we have to change the narrative. Has this system worked? Has it been of any benefit to all of us? Has it been for public good? No. I mean, let us do some evaluation, some critical thinking. If something has not helped us and it has not worked, why would us make effort to have it reversed? The ordinary citizens can. We were talking about how we select our leaders, the elections, which is where to start. Instead of going to be carrying arms and going to the streets and killing people, we can use the elections to transform the society. In every community, we know those who are honest. We know those who work. That is why when they were talking about direct primaries, there are some pros and cons to direct primaries. If you have direct primaries, anybody can jump into the race. All you need to do is to work hard and have people who will support you, right? People who share the same ideas with you. And they will come and back you up. You put your paper, you go in. So it's not a question of people selecting or using their power or using impunity to impose people on other people and all this issue of lack of internal democracy in parties, But every party should have membership card. If you're a member, you pay dues for the party. So it's the party, the money you pay that the party is used to be, that they used to run the party and so on and so forth. It doesn't have to be the big guys bringing the money. So somehow this narrative has to be changed. It has to be changed. And it starts from the elections, for example. That people need to now begin to, in fact, there are what we call local palavers, that is isolated palavers. That is where you begin from the words to select people. For example, if you say, we are going to build a road on self-help in this community today, we don't have government money, but we'll make an announcement. We are going to build this road in this community. Anybody who is interested in helping build this road should come to a meeting. Don't invite anybody special about this. If the emir, the chief, or whoever thinks he wants to serve, come here. And we believe that those who show up are those who have the passion and the will to do it. So if you don't make special invitation, give people the honor they don't deserve, people who have not helped the society, and you keep on recycling them and making them feel important when they are not really important in our lives. They have not helped us. It doesn't work. Make an announcement. We are going to do this. Anybody who feels concerned and committed to be part of this, please show up.
There's this other issue that, in the political arena is almost as if people who are credible enough feel like, well, politics is dirty. I'm not going to engage. I'm not going to be involved with this because I can't see myself going through the stress, the way the process is and all of that. And we have quite a number of them. People who can make informed decisions, distancing themselves from, the political arena in its entirety. What do you say to such people?
Well, if the atmosphere is very toxic, there's no need getting involved. I mean, if you know that you're going to get hot, you don't need to get involved.
So how do you make the change? How do you, because we need such people to
It's through this kind
change.
of policies we are making in the National Assembly, and that those policies will be signed into law and that they will be, enforced. Because if we do those things, and we have people who can go to the House and argue for these things, and then you pass the laws, because you need like-minded people who can go into you don't have to be a single guy making the difference, but you can make the difference in your own way, in the sense that you can convince other people. Great ideas begin from one individual or a couple of individuals. Change begins with the individual, so somebody or some people need to get involved and get people of like minds. Let them get into the House and debate and make laws, that will be people friendly. That can help to change all this. We are not saying that people shouldn't have money or that you shouldn't support people, But don't buy that position that you cannot handle, that you cannot run. Because we've seen people get into office, and then the office they're overwhelmed by the demands of the office. They can't even run the system. But they've been struggling so hard to be there, and they cannot do it. So somehow the selection process has to be tweaked. I don't know how we're going to do it, but at least we have started.
Okay.
With the electronic voting and the electronic transmission of results and so on and so forth. And many people are agitated, many people are concerned that we're not getting the best out of our effort and our involvement in all this.
Okay. Now, you earlier mentioned that Nigeria is not investing enough, in peace building.
Yes.
Is this because Nigeria does not take peace building as a priority?
Yes, they take it for granted. And like I said, we are not proactive. We don't do anything until things get so bad. Then you see us running from pillar to post, like a fire brigade and so trying to put it out. But this have to be very deliberate, like I said. What I'm telling you about the family and how to build a family is part of peace building. You are being proactive. You are looking into the future. You are addressing some definite issues. The judiciary, can they do something different? Yeah, it's all part of peace building. Can we respond to early warning systems? Any warning when we see something, we respond to it. Can we do that? So it doesn't have to be one huge effort. It can be pockets of efforts in different sectors of the society. Everybody contributing. Is it in teaching? Is it in performing arts? You can use your music, to build peace, and so on and so forth. So it's an effort that requires everybody, contributing something on various levels. But again, there has to be a general policy whereby the government can say, listen, peace is our goal. It's even in our national anthem and so on and so forth. It's our goal. And then we are making every effort. I was discussing with some guys in terms of the bills that are made in the House of Assembly. Do they ever think about these bills before they come out? That is the people who put out bills out there for debate or whatever. Do they ever go through it properly? Do they do some scenario building to think about the cost and consequences of some of the things they want to do and how it's going to impact on the society and so on and so forth? It is not done. So legislation on its own also has its own skills, its own, ideology or the way it looks at everything. So you got to begin there, mainstream peace building within the legislative system. So that whatever they do, they are looking at, is it people friendly? Is it peace friendly? Will it generate peace? Or will it be cantankerous? So in every sphere, the leadership itself has to show example. It's also part of the peace building. That when you live by example and what you say yes, it means yes. Everybody. Can you ask a typical Nigerian child now, who is your idol? Who is your political idol? Who is your role model? Please, you guys who are the media, can you go around and ask Nigerian children?
That's quite difficult.
Who is your role model and see if they have, if there's any role model at all. This is part of the problem. That people need to begin to lead by example.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. We've been speaking with Samie Ihejirika. He is the Executive Director, Strategic Empowerment and Mediation Agency, SEMA. Thank you for coming. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes. All right, talking about peace building in the country, talking about new approaches on conflict resolution and mechanisms. It's a duty for all of us, just like our guest has said. It's something that we all must play our part, to ensure that there's peace via our utterances, our engagements, interpersonal, our actions, our communication and all of that. These are things that influence our relationship as a nation. And so we want to see more of national cohesion and unity.
We'll also want to see, the government prioritizing peace building, as a mechanism as well.
Yes, truly, because I think government has a chunk of the responsibility of bringing the citizens together.